to imagine all life as you know it stopping instantaneously and every molecule in your body exploding at the speed of light.
Total protonic reversal.
Protonic reversal.
Protonic reversal with your host, Conan Neutron. Broadcasting from a secret underground lair in Milwaukee, Wisconsin.
A gigantic middle finger to everything that is rotten about music, rock and roll, and corporate power.
Thing is, though, if you don't laugh, you're going to go on a killing spree with sharpened nails.
Confidence of a hero or a fool. I wasn't exactly certain which.
Could not be more professional.
It means something. It means something. You know, that's my take on it. What's yours?
Protonic reversal.
That's like a science thing, right?
Indeed it is. It is a science thing. It is a science place. It is a scientific fact that we are all up in your face. It is time once again for the one, the only Protonic reversal. That's right. Welcome to it. Last episode of 2024. Technically not true because I have the best of the year in albums episode, but let's face facts. It's basically a clip show, right? So when you think of Protonic reversal as the first name in people talking, that's what this is. And in just a few minutes, I'm talking to Erik and Darren from Kerosene 454, who there's a fantastic new re-release of their record. Can't wait to talk to them about it. But before we do that, welcome to Conan Neutron's Protonic Reversal. I'm your host, Conan Neutron. I'm a rock and roll lifer that's been touring and recording for 24 years, most known for the band Conan Neutron, The Secret Friends. Music is a huge part of my life, and I use the format of this very long-running podcast to talk about music with musicians whose work I enjoy and respect, but who may not be household names. This is episode 413. Now, if this is your first time listening to the show, archives of it are available for free. No ads, no sponsors, no kidding, at protonicreversal.com. However, if you want to get support the show and get episodes sooner, $1 a month at patreon.com/protonicreversal will achieve that goal. And if you like the show or even just a single episode, please feel free to like, subscribe on your platform of choice, share it around the internet, or even leave a review. All of that helps people discover the show. It beats back the almighty algorithmic overlords. It's just a darn nice thing to do. So there you go. Kerosene 454, great band. I want to say I first found this band through epitonic.com, which when you talk about older websites, that's an older website. But great band that a West Coast guy, had to find through the records. And very excited that there's this reissue and activity. So without any further ado, let's talk to Erik and Darren, Kerosene 454. Gentlemen, welcome to the show, man.
Hello.
Hey, man. How's it going?
It's great to have you. This was Solid Brass has been bringing me a lot of stuff lately. A bunch of cool bands. I'm like, yeah, I know that band. Hell yeah, I know that band. And this was hearing the Made with Love reissue of Kerosene 454. I was like, that's awesome. Yes, let's do that. Absolutely. Darren, as you know, I even mentioned when I saw you at that Continual show in Madison, I was like, oh, you should be on the show. Like, why haven't we done that? That'd be awesome.
Yeah.
I have no one to blame. I have no producer to blame. So it's literally just my fault all the time when things don't happen. But how did this all come together? How did you come to do this with the Solid Brass guys? Tell me about that. Nice Continual singer. By the way, nice shout out from Rollins, too, by the way.
Yeah.
Really? I missed that.
Absolutely.
Who is one of the few people who very politely has declined being on this show. I'm like, all right, well, he's very polite about it. So I get it. It's fine. I've had a lot of the people in Black Flag. It's fine. Yeah, it's not his deal anymore. No big deal. But it is his deal to give big ups to a lot of DC bands. It was like Continuals, Bedmaker, I was like, wow, good for him. But we're talking about Kerosene 454. So how does this come to pass?
So first off, I wanted to say thanks for having us.
Yeah, my honor.
This is truly the first Kerosene-specific interview we've done since being a band.
Right.
And it's the first interview we've done that wasn't going to a zine. So this is the first interview that's actually in the digital age. Because Kerosene pretty much existed as a run-up to the internet band. Like, it broke up in 98. So that means the explosion of the internet and the explosion of streaming and all the things that followed came after us. We didn't deal with any of that. But because the records that came out then were out of print, that means that they didn't get hosted. So the only record that we had hosted online was the one that Polyvinyl re-released, was the first record.
Right. And of course, for modern audiences, if you're not on these streaming services, you basically don't exist, because that's how you interact with everything, right? So, and everything does, of course, exist these days at present tense, like in a way that can be kind of cool, and the bands can find an audience they never would have in the first place. But no, that is notable, because I was even thinking about bands where it predates the YouTube era, right? Like, I didn't, for instance, I had no idea what you dudes look like. None. Because I never saw you play. I was like, I don't know, what does these guys look like?
In the street plenty of times, I'm sure.
Yeah, right. And it's like, oh, they look like these dudes. Okay, well, fine. But like, no, but there was how would I find that out? It was literally like a fanzine. I was like, oh, here's a picture in Copper Press or something. Sure. Like, I don't even know what it is, which is great. And I like to think of this show and shows like it as being an extension of zine culture and that kind of thing, sort of writ large. But you also bring up a really good point of being around when there technically is an internet, but not in the ways that we know it. And you guys, go ahead.
Well, because all of our tours were booked via expensive phone calls up until
phone cards, right?
Yeah, phone cards and or long distance calls, which, the first order of business after getting home from tour was pay back the phone calls to book the tour. And then it wasn't until the very end. I remember when we toured Europe, which was near the end, we had a laptop, which, it's like this thick or something.
And laptop, and it looks like an actual brick. Yeah. I
remember that we were able to book some of the shows via email, but it was really at the very end. And that was like a dream to not have to pay this off.
Yeah.
So the digital, so the internet age, I don't think I even had an email address until 1998 or 99 or something like that. But I could be a little late on that.
Yeah. So. Yeah. Well, and that's, it's internet. The jury's out whether it was a good idea or not. But anyway, it's definitely defined a culture for.
It certainly changed the music industry.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, people expect all music to be free now. So. But the nice thing too is when you have something that's done with love and respect to the material that is put out in such a way that I think a lot of people will engage with that differently. Like, it's the same sort of thing where there's like a rise of physical media for movies too, right? Like, okay, there are all these streaming services, but if you are a really big like Wim Wenders or David Lynch fan or something, you're gonna pick up like a physical copy so you can see all the extras and not have it yanked from a streaming service if you want to watch it, something along those lines. And it's best represented, I feel, with this kind of thing where there's just a reissue that's done with an eye towards history and an eye towards what made the band interesting and cool, and presented, not necessarily taken out of context, but presented in the best possible form. And I think that the Solid Brass guys have done a really good job doing this. What's it like going back to this stuff, though?
Yeah, I mean, the original plan was basically just to get the stuff that wasn't available digitally out there.
Right, in the world.
Yeah, in the world, because it didn't even exist streaming at all.
Because I've got a cassette, like the Kerosene 454 cassette. It's got one of your records on one side, one on the other, like about 20 feet that way. Do I have a cassette player anymore? No, I don't. but I still have the cassette, like a lot of bands. So, but I think it's important to note, just to get it out in the world is like a major achievement, really. So sorry to interrupt the flow there, but
no. That was the original goal, and we had talked to a number of different people about re-releasing it over the years, and it was like really it was a matter of us getting it together. With all of these bands that are re-releasing shit. I mean, even talking to the Solid Brass dudes and everybody else that have done reissues. getting bands to get it together, and, like, find their old masters, or we spent like shit. Like I remember we made a spreadsheet years ago trying to just track who had reels,
who has the tapes, right?
Yeah, we were each going online, adding like our information in there and shit like that. And then Darren recently got reels. Well, I guess Juan had reels, and then I guess Ian had contacted him also, or did he give you reels that he got from Juan? I think was something like that.
Yeah, apparently Juan dropped off a bunch of reels, not only from Kerosene but other bands, and that's where I picked them up. Was from Ian. Yeah.
Yeah, because Juan was running Slowdime with John Wall, who was in Kerosene also, and so. But Juan somehow, I don't understand how Juan ended up with our reels. It's weird. I mean, he had recorded a few things for us, but these things, because we usually were pretty on it as far as keeping track of our shit. But in this instance,
and of course, Juan Carrera for the Warmers, slow time, just context for the younger audience, of course.
Yes.
They may not know these things. Well, and it's cool. Well, first of all, it's great they just weren't lost to history, right? I mean, because there's been some instances of that where people like, I don't know where it is, like let's try to put it together, I guess, some other way. But I feel like Came By to Kill Me. That's because Darren, that was the first one. That was the first one with you, right? I feel like that's where it kind of all started to come together. Am I remembering that?
I was on all three records. The first record, a lot of those songs were already kind of worked out before I got in the band.
That's what I mean. That's what, as far as your creative input is what I mean. Sorry, I should have been more clear.
Yeah, definitely. The second record is when we were firing on all cylinders. Yeah, absolutely. I think it's when we really crafted our sound.
Yeah, it kind of felt like the band was hitting in stride, and in that way, it's a formative record, and it's one of those things where. Again, having only pieces of history available when you're coming from a certain, it gives you an impartial picture, like an overview of what it is and why maybe people cared about it, or and in some cases can be a situation because there's times where like a band can be a little too early or a little too late, maybe both, maybe at the same time. But like it again, the nice thing about the internet as we know it now is that everything kind of gets to. Like it exist and be an ability for people to be able to stumble upon and find it, and it can find a different audience later on that maybe has no context of any kind. Maybe they've never been to a punk rock show, Maybe they don't have like a whole they don't have all the Fugazi records, they don't have all the Jawbox records. They they have none of that. They're just listening to it for the first time, and they have their own context and lived experience comes with it. And I think that's lovely. I think that's beautiful. But again, you got to be in it to win it. Like if people can't hear it, then what are you even doing? So, so I love that, and I think that's. I mean, first of all, it's an awesome record. So I guess that's a good place to start. But what's it like coming back to this? Because it had been, how long had it been?
I mean, that record was recorded in '96.
So, oh my God.
So
almost 2 years
96.
ago. No kidding. Yeah, a little while ago. Yeah. Last week, basically, right? Yeah.
But it's interesting going back and listening, especially when you haven't heard things in a while, and having to listen to it repeatedly because we're remastering and doing all this sort of stuff, and then. It was also interesting in doing like the write-up that's going to go in the record of trying to remember all of these elements of things that happened and listening back to the songs, remembering what happened in the studio, recording with Jay Robbins and with Juan and with Don Santera, multiple times, and all of like the aspects of recording with them. The thing is we practiced so much that we were really buttoned up pretty much every time, except for vocals, which sometimes were getting written in the studio, or I'd go write them in a park at night or something like that.
A rich tradition of waiting to doing the homework at the night before.
Yeah, exactly. But and I remember it was around that time that we toured with the VSS, which was interesting because
Yeah.
Dave's the one who contacted me about doing this stuff with Solid Brass because he works with them doing writing stuff for them and promo stuff.
Oh, cool. I actually didn't know that.
Yeah.
That's good to know.
So he reached out and, like I said, we talked to multiple people about doing it. And then I think that the fact that he wanted to do everything and do the vinyl and like push it and all that sort of stuff was just like, plus he's local. We went and met him for coffee, and
that's always nice. Yeah.
Yeah. It just kind of locked it in. And then we like went hard on getting it together.
Dave and Joshua, they were like slaves into Pleasure Forever. They practice Earl practice space replicator. They practice like when you walk out the door, the next door was their practice place. So I used to see those guys like all the time, and it was like, which is amazing because it's like, okay, the fucking Champs played there, like Mates of State, all these like great bands, but it was like, oh yeah, because we're all broke as hell and we just need someplace to practice in this building. This seems to be easy enough to do. But I love all those interconnected pieces for it too, because it like when I think of punk rock and I think of like whatever that means, and punk rock community, it is like it's a mesh of people trying to do good, trying to like put cool things in the world. And I feel like there was like the fact that I knew about you guys on the West Coast is frankly astounding. Because, again, we didn't have the internet as you know it now. You couldn't just follow an Instagram profile or something like those lines. Did I see you? No, I did not. But I knew you existed and liked the record. And that was because of the efforts of people like that, right?
Yeah, the interconnected thing is crazy. I mean, especially in the way that we all came together. And, well, Darren, you should talk about the...
Yeah, I would love to hear about that, please.
The first...
how everything came about?
Yeah, well, this is like the first in 89. All the way back then.
Okay. Well, yeah, it's kind of strange how things work out. I just graduated high school, and I saw an ad in Maximum Rock and Roll that Wind of Change was going on tour. And I was putting on shows at it was called Jam and Skate. And it was a skating rink / rock club.
Right.
And I contacted them and put on a show. And then who was in that band was John and Jim from Kerosene later. But,
right.
A few years later, I was living in State College, Pennsylvania, and Erik Astor, which was the drummer from Wind of Change, moved to town and started Art Monk Construction. And then Kerosene was like one of their first bands. And and it's funny how I reconnected with John and Jim. And it's just funny how, like, if I wouldn't have contacted these guys in '89, we probably wouldn't have this podcast talking about Kerosene 454.
Exactly.
But it's just so, it's funny, like, everything that you do in life leads to something else. And it's like, if you don't take those chances, history is going to be written a different way.
It's like the butterfly
Good or
effect
bad.
or something. Sure. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, and then like the further connections, like Alex, who was in Wind of Change, went to be in Hoover and then moved to DC. Juan, who was in the Warmers, was also an Arizona dude. Yeah. And he was in bands he was in Fuse with Jim Wall and Alex and Astor, maybe. And then he moved to State College first. And he incidentally was the first Kerosene guitar player besides.
Oh, okay. Cool. Okay.
So
wow.
There was a series. Not only am I the third guitar player, Darren's like the fifth drummer. But I mean, Kerosene kind of existed as this like series of quick points up until a point. And then it was the four of us for the duration. But then there was this dude, Jeff Williams, who was in the Stench from Salt Lake, who played guitar before I did also.
So Kerosene starts coming together like 92-ish, like around that time period. And then, so Situation's 95, that I know.
Yeah.
But like what, so tell me.
Yeah, it was.
Go ahead, please.
No, I was going to say, I joined the band in the probably May of '94, and we recorded that record in December. So yeah, it came out in '95.
But recorded in '94, came out in '95. Yeah, which was
Yep.
it was. I remember well. I was still in high school, but the it was a interesting time for music because it's sort of like there was like the, I call it kind of the gold rush of like '91, and so and like for a while there was a time period they would let the freaks in until they figured out that we can just make our own bands and like we don't need to do any of it. But I felt like Kerosene just definitely had its own thing going on, which definitely comes from what I ascribe to, like the DC scene of like just make your own, DIY punk rock world and just don't worry about any of that, really. What was it like for the actual band, like for you guys? Like what was it like around that time when you're doing Situation? Like where you guys? I'm not physically where you're at, but where were you at, like creatively and like to me it feels like the band like just started like, wow, you're really hitting on a different plane. Like you're really hitting it hard right now.
Well, I know that we had to. I mean, with Darren, it was a whole new deal because coming from when I first joined the band, like I dropped out of college and moved to LA, and the band existed there for a few years first. And like it was called Kerosene, and then we found out there was some other band called Kerosene, so we tacked the 454 on.
What was it? What was okay? So what was the 4? I've always wondered this. It's probably something that you've answered many times. Why the 454?
Oh, I think we just like had to figure out something to differentiate. It's just an engine block size. I mean, it's an engine block size.
I thought it'd be like, it's a Philip K. Dick's area code or something. Like
it could have been like an engine block size of the van,
okay,
or something like that.
It's real hard. Well, because it's always like it says, because it almost sounds like, that's like a special compound that is only available. Okay.
And it's funny because
arbitrary number, fine.
Mentioning this to when I first was dating my girlfriend, she was like, "Oh, you were like a '90s band with a number in the name." Okay.
All right. Yeah.
Yeah, because then I remember there was like other weird bands, like all of a sudden we were playing, and then there was some band 454 Big Block, and I was like, wait, okay.
It was the style of a time.
Yeah. But after like moving back to DC, and I grew up, and I was from there. Darren was from Pittsburgh, and the Walls were from Phoenix, Arizona.
The Fabulous Wall Brothers, which have one of the toughest last names in the history of music.
Big dude.
Yeah.
And John's certainly a big dude on stage.
Yeah. It's like, hey, it's like Planet of the Apes. You know what you're getting into with the name, right?
That's right. But then I remember, because we had come back on we met Darren we had moved back to DC, and like the drummer we were playing with in LA, he kind of guested for a time. He kind of just said, "Yeah, I'll tour with you, and this will be it." But we had moved back. The three of us, me and Jim and John, had moved back to DC, and then this dude Bobby, who was playing drums with us at the time, he flew back, and then we toured, and that was the longest tour we ever did, and I've ever done, which was close.
How long?
3 months. Great.
Yeah,
we moved the country twice. I mean. And in the beginning of that tour, we played with Darren's band, which was Glendale at the time.
Nice.
And then, and we played like a run of shows. So it was like we became friends with them. You get to all of us, like, at John Hiltz's house, all that sort of stuff, like playing in the basement.
Well, yeah, and there's a certain unique way you get to know someone when you're on tour with them, even if it's like for a small amount of time. Like
totally.
You get a shorthand very quickly. But it is funny. I do feel like there's gradations of tour of being disconnected from society. I feel like, if you're out for like, over 2 weeks, that's like one level. I feel like 6 weeks is another. Yeah, but 3 months, that's like, no, you are out to MF and C, man. You are out. in a way that I'm not even sure, like, unless is it cost effective for bands to do that now? Well, it depends on the band, but like, you not only have your own world that you're living in, you are, you're basically being pirates in a van when you're out there. So when you find like-minded ships, it's going to be immediate bonds forged.
Yeah, I think the 2 weeks. 2 weeks. I don't think we considered a tour. I think that was like an
Right.
out.
Right. Yeah, it's like we're just hanging out.
But-
yeah, exactly.
But now in your 50s, that feels like a 9-week tour.
Oh yeah, exactly. It hits the same. Yeah, you're like, oh my god, my back. Okay. Yeah.
So Darren, I don't know if you want to talk about you want to talk about how like the Glendale scene happened, and then what happened with that, and then you were like with Samuel at the end there too, or driving them or something.
Yeah. So tell me. So Darren, don't pipe in, man. Let's hear about it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, just to
What a
kind of
show.
move back.
Pipe in.
To move back from like the Kerosene thing. Yeah, he's right. There was this weird triangle of State College, Pennsylvania, Morgantown, West Virginia, and DC.
Yeah.
And there was a few guys from Morgantown, Jay Dumpko from Lincoln, and Jay Marinelli from Yentl. They moved to State College to join, Glendale, and then also Samuel at certain times. But just very strange how that whole triangle was. And then a bunch of us moved to DC.
Right.
And, and then now there's very few of us live here and everybody else lives somewhere else. So, but it's just funny how that whole triangle was for a period of time.
It's a gravitational field and a gravitational repulsion somehow. Yeah.
Sure.
That happens. It's people go on. they do different things.
Yeah.
So how did with situation at hand, how did Jay, the fabulous Jay Robbins, a friend of the show, end up being the guy? Like, it was like, oh, we need to do this.
Well, yeah, I remember we were thinking about somebody that would be able to record us, and we weren't having too much luck. And I think I was the one that suggested Jay. And I remember going to see Jawbox play at University of Maryland, and I just approached him. I just told him, "Hey, I'm Darren from Kerosene 454. We're trying to record a record.
Yeah.
I know you've been recording a couple bands recently. Would you be into it?" And he was like, "Yeah, let's do it." And then that's when we set it up to, I can't remember, Eric, did we do that in December of 94?
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure it was in December.
I'd certainly known Jay and them since they were a 3-piece in Jawbox and government issue time period.
Yeah.
I mean, Darren, I'm sure you saw government issue during that time period.
No, well, and definitely a guy that even early on, not just great at capturing sound, but great at like capturing vibe as well. Which some of the best engineers and producers you can say that about, but like definitely somebody where it's like that's the perfect guy to do that.
Well, yeah,
from an outside perspective, I don't know to say.
Yeah, I mean, and also like it was early on. I mean, he was basically doing the producing. There was somebody else that was doing the actual engineering,
right?
And it was in the same studio, which is now Magpie Cage.
Oh, is it really? Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay, I didn't know that.
Yeah,
okay,
so,
awesome.
So that's where like Jawbox did their big record, and
of course,
I think who's the other band I'm thinking of? Shudder to Think.
Shudder, yeah.
So I mean, the one thing that I was blown away is that I think we recorded our whole record in, was it 2 days, 3 days?
Well, start to finish, it was 5, and we slept.
Okay.
Whatever, Steely Dan. Okay,
all of us and Jay slept in the studio. Every night.
And that's the thing. That's what I remember. Jay slept on the floor with us. You talk about dedication.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
He's deep in it, man. Yeah.
But I thought that was his first band recording there that wasn't Jawbox. Like
that's true. That's true.
Yeah.
But
that was fairly early on. Yeah.
Yeah. He hadn't recorded anyone else. Like I think he had recorded his girlfriend's band at the time, and that was just demos. That was just at home, right? Or was that in a studio?
It was. I think it was in a studio, but I think he did like 1 or 2 recordings before ours. So
okay, but I remember we were one of the first, and then, and I know that we were the first to do demos at his. I thought we were the first to do demos at his house, besides Jawbox doing demos. I know that Monorchid did one.
Yeah,
also.
but that was.
Oh, was that the EP? What was that thing called?
I don't think it was released until people released it on the internet much later.
Okay, all right, I'm thinking a different one.
And I remember, the recording in Jay's basement was like, it was just so casual and friendly. And, the job off house was like a couple blocks from us,
Yeah, sure.
And they lived at this house. It was like right across the street from the Blair High School, where Jay went to high school, which is like crazy.
Amazing.
It's like all just right there in Silver Spring, Maryland.
It's all there.
But the demo for the first record we did with Juan, oddly enough, which
no slouch.
In retrospect, like I don't know if that demo should be released. we were trying to figure things out way too much at that point.
Well, and it's that's kind of how it goes with bands. Sometimes you're in the lab, and sometimes you're making sometimes it's your magnum opus. Sometimes you're in the lab, and
Sure.
I think the work aspect of things is sometimes left by the wayside when the tales are told. But like look, even Fugazi, they recorded Steve Albini, right? And like it was like yeah, it's all right. We can do better.
Yeah.
And that's Fugazi, pretty good band. Even they felt that way.
Yeah. And I'm sure you've heard all the tales of recording with Jay and how he's, on it and cares about the music. And it's all true.
Yeah, it's all right.
And Darren ended up playing with, and I played with him in bands, and Darren played him with multiple. How many?
I've seen Darren play with Jay.
Different bands.
Yeah,
3 or 4 different bands.
Yeah.
Or also, if you're, counting his solo project band.
Diaspora of awesome people playing together, which is great. I always love hearing about that. Now, but it's I feel like that it's interesting that it was so early on for him as an engineer, because I feel like he was such like the right person to record the band at that time. And I think there's a really neat energy to the record, like I think in a way that like, whatever, people have all kinds of things that they use to describe records, but I think there's a really cool energy to that record that like just kind of grabs your attention immediately.
Yeah, I think we were all in a learning space for sure.
Yeah. What were you gonna say, Darren?
No, I was just going to say, I think, we were practicing probably 5 times a week at that point.
Yeah, that's a good point. You're shit hot tight, right? So it's like that always helps to like record a good record, unless you're like Pavement. Peace and love.
It's funny too, because when I tell people, and I feel like sometimes they don't believe me, but Erik can tell you, there was weeks where we would practice 5-6 days a week. Am I right or wrong on that one?
Most weeks we did. Even if it was just to run through the set one time.
I mean,
always practice like in a lineup as if we're playing live, so it always sounded the same like when you play live.
Right. Yeah.
And
I mean, that was the first thing we did when we moved into the house we lived in Silver Spring, was we built a room inside of a room so we could be loud, just as loud as we were live. And it was sometimes too loud. I'd wear my headphones with earplugs on. So, but
right, yeah,
but
exactly.
we wanted to be able to do the same thing we did live, so it was natural.
Well, and you wanted to feel the music, right? Like feeling the music. Yeah. It wasn't just hearing it, and that's something that tactile concern, I think, is oftentimes lost with younger generations that are just used to like hearing things on like earbuds, whatever along those lines. Like no, like. You can physically feel it. You can feel the sound waves. Like you can feel the impact on the drums. You can feel every piece of it. It like reverberates in your muscles, in your skeleton, and it hits differently. Literally, hits differently. No, I love that.
Anything that it was loud.
Right. Yeah.
Basically, we were loud. I think in any like live show YouTube comment, it's always like, oh yeah, these guys were really loud.
You get the tinnitus to prove it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I tell you, something that I've been doing on the show a lot with whether it's new records or re-releases and whatnot is kind of going through each of the songs on the record, like one by one, and to mix results sometimes, but But I think it's a cool record, and I would be interested in hearing both of you guys' takes on the various songs, whatever you remember about them. Like, it doesn't have to be like from the recording necessarily, but just something about each of the songs for the people that are interested to kind of like have a tidbit, a morsel, if you will, to be on there. You guys into doing that? I hope so, because I'm introing this bit terribly. Sure. If not, okay.
Sure.
All right, so let's pull it up here. So, Erik, you can kick us off. Tell us about Tracer. Tell us about that song.
I do remember that Tracer was an early on, and this should come as like a probably not a huge surprise, but like in Kerosene there was not a writer. We all wrote.
Right.
Everybody had input. Some people would start. I remember the Tracer was a song that Jim started, and then often it would be like me and him would sit there and then kind of work out something, then start bringing other people in and all that sort of thing. Or John would start it, or I would start it, or, Darren would start something, and like it would be just me and him down in the basement. But Tracer was a song that Jim started, which was interesting because now we were getting into a time period of me doing most of the singing also. And Jim didn't want to sing and play at the same time anymore. He just wanted to play. Which was going to change things. And also, I was trying to figure out how to sing. And in retrospect, looking back, it's really interesting to look back and think, especially like with some Kerosene stuff, I'm just like, man, this sounds so 90s. And also thinking
never.
Well, it was the 90s.
Yeah, it wasn't back the 90s, so there you go.
But there's some things where I'm like, man, I should have been smarter in doing something that was a little more timeless, as opposed to something that, can seem very dated. There's a lot of shit from the 90s that definitely seems dated.
Like the whole, it later was classified as like emo thing, right?
Sure, or the fact that, like it was like the quiet loud thing that like kind of born out of the late 80s, Talk, and then Slint, Spiderland, kind of like
Husker Du, Slint, Pixies, absolutely,
and Pixies for sure, and then like that really dominoed into everybody, us included, right. But because everyone was exploring dynamics, but out of all the songs, Tracer is not one of those songs. Tracer is like a straightforward all the way through song.
No.
There's other dynamic songs on this record, but so I'm getting ahead of myself.
Tracer's just a pretty solid banger. Darren, why don't you tell me about Tracer?
I just remember it was a staple. I think whenever we started playing out live, I think that was probably like on every set list until we broke up. It was just a solid song. I always had a great time playing it. That's what I remember of it. So, yeah.
There's definitely songs that didn't make it, that we didn't keep playing. Even this record, there's like some songs we barely played.
Well, because sometimes something will be like, wow, that sounds great. And then you play it live, you're like, this isn't really doing what I think it's doing, or there's other songs that are more exciting, or you just forget about it too, right? It's just sort of like, whatever, it's fine. That one's cool. It's weird how that works, right?
And honestly, it wasn't always like, for us, it was like, this is a fun song to play. As opposed to, we want to push this song because, well, honestly, Kerosene was not a band who's writing radio hits. So, by design, we at that time, coming off of like the Nirvana and like all that sort of stuff, we were purposefully going in an opposite direction. It's pretty rare that Darren had a straight beat.
Can I tell you? I think if it came out today, it'd have more likely to be a hit than it did back then. Frankly, I'm not saying it's going to be like niche hit, but like whatever. Like, what does that mean in 2024? Everything's atomized, not even balkanized yet. But like, it is weird that how sensibilities have changed. That things that seemed just unearthed. Oh, that's from Pluto. It's like, oh no, that's just whatever. Like, they don't bat an eyelash at us. Okay, fine, all right, that's cool. I remember playing progress.
I remember playing with Darren years later. It might have been an RSA or something like that, and I was playing something, and Darren said something like, "Man, like when Erik plays, like I just can't play a straight beat. I just want to play something
kind of nuts." Yeah. Well, and that's cool because that's kind of one of the things that like led to the band's unique sound, and like, but it's also, yeah, stuff goes in and out of vogue for like no reason sometimes. Because there's some songs that's like, how is that? Like, all right, that Battles song, right? Like, I like that band Battles, they're fine, and like when they did that one record, and I was like, what? Wait, this is a hit now? I'm saying this is like. What's happening? Like in this song, this sounds like. First of all, it's like it's like Dance for King Crimson. I don't even know what's happening here. Like what was? And it was like I can't believe this is a hit, but I'm here for it. It's fine. You know, not since Funky Town has a weirder song been a hit. But anyway, moving on. All Eyes West. Darren, you kick this one off. Tell me about it. I'm gonna highlight them too, so we know where we're at.
I feel like this song is like so different from what the first record was.
Yeah.
I feel like this is where you start sounding like Kerosene 413 with Darren playing drums, you know?
Yeah.
But yeah, this was another staple. I think this was one we played a lot, you know? It was always fun to play. That's about what I remember of it, to tell you the truth.
I remember it was when it was a song that we couldn't play late in the set because we were too drained of energy to do it.
It's a kind of it seems like it would be kind of like exhausting.
Yeah,
right? Like like in a good way. Like, but you got to pace yourself.
Like Tracer was short. We could stick that anywhere.
Yeah, exactly. That's the lovely thing about short songs. Even if it's exhausting, it'll be over soon. You know? Yeah, that's great. So, Erik, you have anything else for All Eyes West?
Nah, I remember it's a song that John started first. John wrote the bass line for it first. And oddly enough, like I think that, you know, like a lot of the favorite guitar parts like that I wrote and were to things that I didn't write, you know, because you ended up being like a lot more creative in it. And you know, made me love the creative process with other people, which blew out into all the rest of my life, you know, into working on projects with other people,
collaboration,
working world,
sure,
you know, you are often your best self when you are.
Well, because it's almost like, you know, like when they talk about for improv comedy and stuff, like yes-anding on things like creatively.
Yeah,
Like,
exactly.
oh, yeah, that's great. No, yeah, that's can lead to some really cool results. So, awesome. So, tell me about Closing, Erik.
I know it was one of the first songs we did. I remember that this was a song that Darren always wanted to slow us down because we were going to play it too fast.
Right. Like, loses the groove.
But you know why? Because it's not a song that Darren started. It's a song that Jim started. So the tempo that he started it was, you know, that's the tempo the song was going to be. And I can remember like tons of live shows where if there was somebody other than Darren would be looking at them like, take it slow. Ease back a second before you start this one.
And then you can do the opposite too, where you do it too slow, and you're like, "Oh, we're locked into this now." Okay, all right.
I don't think Darren ever like decided it was too slow.
Okay, but that is always a danger. Well, and that's something where, especially if you're excited, you know, you're like things are going great. Yeah, let's go. You know, it's easy.
Yeah. I mean, it's like a Chris Bratton situation or something like that.
Like you hear a live record, and it's like, did they realize they left the oven on or something? Why are they playing this so fast? They got to get back home? Like, what's happening?
Right. And certainly of like newer bands, you know, they're really excited to be on stage. I'm sure we've all seen bands where, you know, it's their first tour, they're like ripping through it. Yeah,
it's like, oh man, somebody got a timer going? Like, what's happening right now?
Racing.
Yeah, exactly. It's like you're losing the groove, man. So, Darren, tell me about Closing.
To tell you the truth, I cannot, for the life of me, I can't remember how that song sounds.
You want me to play it for you? I can play it for you.
You can play it. I cannot remember how it goes.
I remember this was the one that had like Jim played the at the beginning, and then you and I came in together.
Yeah,
awesome.
This is
right
definitely well, you know, I mean,
it's a lot of songs. It's a long time ago.
Yeah, I remember this being really strange because I was playing a lot of toms through the verses.
Yeah.
It wasn't like really playing a straight beat. So, yeah, this is definitely the where I was listening to a lot of 80s King Crimson, I'll tell you that much. So that was a big influence on me at this time. But I remember really liking playing this song. I mean, there's a lot of the songs on this record I really enjoyed playing live. And this was definitely one of them.
Nice.
I think it's also because it had a different swing than a lot of the others. Yeah. So it's all different tempo.
Yeah, and well, that's gonna always make it differentiate, right? It's gonna make it differentiate a little more, where you can kind of like, oh yeah, that one, cool. You know, you can point it out.
Yeah.
I feel there's almost sort of like punk rock Bufordisms in there, like, you know, like, and I say that as a compliment. I think Bill Bruford's a badass.
Yeah.
Have you ever seen him in like the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame for Yes? Like, he was like, I don't even know why I'm here. It was so great. I was like, oh, this is amazing. This is the only entertaining thing that happened this entire ceremony is Bill Bruford's speech.
Actually, I thought Rick Wakeman was pretty funny.
Rick Wakeman is good too.
So,
You're right. And he didn't even bring the cape. So good for him.
Yeah, that's right. He left it at home.
Please, this is a serious affair. Leave the cape at home.
Yeah.
Injection. Darren, why don't you lead us off on this one? Tell me about Injection.
Once again, was this Don Juan, Erik?
Yeah.
Okay. This is probably one song I wish we would have been able to record later.
How so?
Because it really turned into a different thing live.
Okay.
Yeah, it's one of those songs I wish we would have played on the road a little bit more. I think it would have developed more. But this was definitely get a little more like going out a little bit, you know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, sure.
Because a little more jam going on. But yeah, that's what I remember. But the thing is, we never called it Injection or whatever it's called. We always used to call it Don Juan and the set list. So.
Right, the good old working title, yeah, where you're just like,
yeah,
it's that for reasons.
Yeah.
And then you're like, oh, no, we can't call it that. Let's call it this instead. Okay.
Yeah.
Wait, which one is that again? We've known it for years as this other that name. So, like, what is it?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay, it's that. All right.
Yeah, I think even bands that we toured with always knew it as Don Juan. And
right.
It was often a closer. It was often like the song that we ended on because it was like, I mean, it was long. It was self-indulgent. Yeah. It was like an opus. And, you know, there was.
I would say epic, not indulgent, but yeah, okay, you know. That's
there was like the people that were there for it, and there was the people that were leaving the room. You know?
And there's never shall the twain meet. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. But like Darren said, like it really evolved over time. It became. You know, something where we learned to interplay off each other and drag it out and, you know, explore kind of more like weird, like sonic shit all throughout this song. And yeah, I wish we could have recorded, or even that there was like a good live recording of it, which there's not. There's like some that are, you know, from shows on YouTube and stuff like that, where we were kind of later in doing it, which are more of what it was probably supposed to be, but never recorded. Mm-hmm. Because I mean, when we recorded it, we were just written it. And I wrote the lyrics in the studio and just like, and I didn't even know how I was going to sing on it or anything. And I think because it was like such a, hold on, getting a call. Done.
I'm broadcasting here. Why are you calling me?
And because it was like such like a in your face song. I remember John was just being like, I remember because we recorded it and I didn't even know how to sing on it in studio. And I was just kind of trying things out and just whip the lyrics out. And I remember John was just like, dude, you got to be tougher about it, man. It's like a tough song. You got to be tougher about it.
Right. But it's so new that you're not, you know, it's almost like you can't even get into the emotionality of it necessarily. You're just trying to like get through the day. Get through the song.
And for as practiced as we were, there was always some songs, you know, right up until the recording that were being thrown together at the last minute, which is unfortunate, but you know, That's what happens.
That's how it goes, playing in a band, you know?
And some of those work out great.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. All right, tell me about Angelic in G. What's it? G sharp, right? That's sharp. You think I would know? I've been playing music 25 years, but I play it. I don't read it. That's the thing. So,
Eric. You start, Eric.
Eric, it's your turn.
Okay. This was a instrumental song. I remember we demoed this song twice with Jay before recording it. Jay always wanted me to sing on it, and I never did. I never even tried. I think I didn't really know how to at the time. But the first, as much as like I love the way that this record came out, the first demo that we did of this song at Jay's, that's how this song should be. It's way more like ghosty, and there's like a bunch of. I think Jay was just fucking around, like in a way that he did at home, but it was harder to do in studio. Like really, like throwing a ton of reverb on something or something like that.
Like almost dubby style or something. Like
like because I mean, Darren knows, like Jay can be. He's got a push pull with being free and being like buttoned up when recording.
Yeah.
And he was definitely free when we were recording demos at his house. And I don't know. I mean, Darren, you can probably speak to more how recording processes were with Jay and how the freedom came and ebbed and flowed.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like when Kerosene was recording, I feel like we were playing a way that we played as a band. It wasn't.
Yeah.
We weren't trying to be cute, I think the hours we put in practicing and playing live, we wanted to kind of capture that on a record, right?
Mm-hmm. Sure.
We weren't looking to, make it sound like something different. It was like, this is the band, and we want it to sound like Kerosene 454. So, and I feel like that was the approach at that time. So, I
mean, it was to the point that potentially in a damaging kind of way, because I mean, by the last record, we started like inviting a lot more things, and both Jay and Juan and Don were playing like keyboards on stuff, and like Darren did Spookin' the Birds with Carlo in the basement,
That's right, yeah.
Which has a good story behind it, where the title comes from.
All right, well,
lay it on.
Yeah, lay it on me. Yeah. What is it? I don't know.
Well, so my dad was big into pigeons, and he had racing pigeons. So
old world.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
But when I was in high school, I'd be practicing my drums, and he was like, "Hey, knock that off! You're going to be spooking my birds." That's where the title comes from. So.
The drumming's going to spook the birds. Fantastic. I love it.
Spook my birds.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
All right, that's great. That was the juice was worth the squeeze on that one. That's good.
That's right. There you go.
But this was also a song we didn't play live very much. We probably played it live like what, a couple times maybe, and we might have played it as.
I think if we played it, it probably would have been on the tour after we did the record, and then it probably drifted away after that.
Was that the one with Blue Tip?
I mean, hard to say.
Well, yeah.
Blue Tip tours.
Right.
Yeah, I think I counted once. I think we might have played about 125 shows with Blue Tip. And I'm not kidding around.
That's awesome. I love that. That must have been
we were in it together.
Yeah, like that's look. That's a good double bill. Like I feel like the bands were both very well matched while not being the same thing. Like that's it. Wish I could have seen it. Wish I would have known, and/or could have seen it, but. Whatever. Found out about it too late. Start my life. T-100. I think Darren, it's your turn to start on this one.
Another one. Another banger. You know,
Another magnum
But
opus
it
by
wa-
Kerosene
it-
454.
It was no. It wasn't a 5-minute song. It was more of like 2.5 minutes long or so.
Yeah.
My style. Yeah, I don't remember writing it, but I definitely remember that was definitely a staple on the set. Once we started playing that live, that was on every set list. I mean, Eric, would you agree on that one?
Yeah, this was also the fastest song we ever wrote.
It's pretty fast, man.
I mean fast, like because most of our writing, we would write a song over the course of like 4 or 5 months.
Right.
And I remember Darren and I wrote this song in one practice, the bulk of it, which was insanely rare for us. And the only thing that changed was like elongating one chorus or something like that.
Right.
As you know, most of the songs kind of like develop and you change parts and all that sort of stuff. This one was like written as it's going to be. And on top of that, like, I don't think like there was not like much like complexity going on between like what John and Jim were writing either. It was really just kind of like, we're writing.
Propulsive.
Yeah, we're going to do these parts as you're doing them.
Right.
Also, this is like a song that we could write as a band because we were so well practiced at that point. It's like, it's mathy.
Yeah.
Certainly mathy. Like it's
but no one's going to get thrown because everybody knows, how everybody plays together and how to interact with each other and so on, which is good for a band to know.
Yeah.
As it turns out.
But yeah, it's also a song we play to the end.
Anything else on T-minus 100 to share?
I think it was certainly like, it had the elements of things that we were often trying to do, staying just hookish enough to not drive everyone out.
To have a little bit there.
Yeah. Because we were unashamed about driving people out. I think like there was like, when there was people in the front row, like with their being obnoxious about putting like their fingers in their ears that we were too loud.
Yeah.
We're not turning down. Like
what do you think that's going to do?
We're here to fucking...
We're going to do this even harder now.
Yeah.
Now that you're being a dick about it, we're going to do even harder. Yeah.
So.
And that's a decision as well, right? But like in a good way. And that comes from the confidence that comes of being a band that's, that does it live and you know what you do and you're confident that you're going to do what you're going to do, and sometimes you're going to play 2 people. Maybe you'll play through them too. Who knows?
And it's also an aspect of the times, because we weren't playing places where we had a sound guy most of the time. Most of the time it was basements or,
right.
We were lucky if we got to play Nyabingi, which was
I know it well.
Yeah,
yes.
They got the AC/DC Back in Black.
Yes.
Set up. This was a place in Morgantown that had like an incredible sound system.
Yeah, sounded amazing. When I played there, the opening band had a fire breather. And it was was that my first U.S. tour? It might have been my first U.S. tour. I was like, I can't believe we have a fire breather opening for us. That's amazing. But yeah, like.
And Darren, what was the name of the dude that did sound there or whatever?
Well, the sound system was a local sound system called Squirrel Sound.
Oh yeah.
Which was owned by Robert Bowers, which was a local hero because he was in the band The Inbred, and they were like West Virginia hardcore band.
Yeah.
And but I think what Eric's talking about is a guy by the name of Fuzzy.
Oh yeah, Fuzzy.
Fuzzy.
Which played in a band called Yentl years ago. So
Yentl, nice.
Yentl.
That's it.
Yeah.
That's the they did like a, what was it? That's some very pretentious name. They did think emissions from the monolith or something like that. I was like that they did it in Nyabingi for a while. I was like, oh, it's a audacious Lord of the Rings sounding name. Cool, right on. Good for you. I bet there's a lot of beards at that. Anyway, moving on. Fair Fire. Erik, tell me about this one.
We barely played it. I know that much. In fact, we played it so little, I can't even remember what, we had a working title for it. Fair Fire was never what the title was. It was something that was
called something different.
Yeah, it was thrown out I think I threw it out while our friend Jason was doing the layout because I didn't even know what the song title was supposed to be or was going to be or anything like that.
Right.
It was a song I think we played live maybe once and never again, which is weird. It was like a ripper of a song.
Yeah, it's a cool tune. I mean, just.
But Darren, do you even remember what this is? Because of the title, like.
Man, I'm having a hard time remembering this one. Man.
I remember Jim wrote it.
I know we played Worthington a lot, but yeah, I can't remember.
Yeah. This was one. This was one that Jim wrote. We actually demoed it with Jay also, but I think we demoed it with Jay as an instrumental.
Nice.
And then, which oddly enough, like a lot of the stuff we have is instrumentals that we demoed with Jay, which to me is like really cool to go back and listen back because then I get to hear Darren really well.
Whether the vocals have been pumped over it, yeah. No, that's yeah, and that one's like I feel like it's like it barely clears 3 minutes, right? It's kind of like a nice little. You had T-100 before, then you got a couple short bangers, and then get a little epic later on. It's fine.
Yeah, and I'm sure you talked to other people about this, but like this, the order of songs was like done for vinyl. Like I'm sure you've talked to many people and like thinking about like the opener of the second side, which was T-100, as opposed to.
Because so the big thing, and for folks, they're probably sick of me hearing about this, but like you lose bass response the longer the side of it goes. So generally speaking, you want to end the record on something that doesn't have huge bass at the end of it, and then you want to start off almost as if you're like starting off your record with the B side, something like killer that keeps people engaged. And that's I still do that, by the way, but it's the sequencing. God, it's so important. It's so important, and I feel like now everyone just front loads it. Like first 3 songs are like, those are our best songs, and it's like, all right, well.
Yeah, I remember talking like with Jay about this at the time too, because I remember when we were recording. They were recording the self-titled record, or Jawbox was recording the self-titled record. I
fucking love that record.
It's great.
It's so good.
And I feel like that is the one that gets forgotten about because I like that one a lot more.
I think it's their best record.
Yeah. Agreed.
It is.
It's so good. Like every song is amazing. And it's like in different ways too. Yeah. And like can I tell you? I'm just gonna sidebar here. One of the times Jay was on, we spent the vast majority of the show talking about that record. People got pissed at me. I'm like, first of all, how dare you get pissed at me providing entertainment for you for free? Secondly, like, have you listened to that record lately? It's amazing. Like, go listen to it and put your report on my desk Monday morning, please. Thank you.
Right. But yeah, I remember talking to Jay about like sequencing at the time, and there was all the theories about like, well, you want the third song on the record to be like the big one. That's like the big song.
Yeah.
And I remember everyone was into the third song. And then it was like, before that, it was like the second song. It's never the first song.
It's like, first song is like your bombastic intro, right? And then it's like, okay.
Right.
You got to lay into it.
but I think on that Jawbox record, like the first video they did was for the first song on that record.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And then I think they did the spoiler video also, right? If I remember right.
Yep.
Something like that, which was like the maybe first song B-side or second song B-side. Anyway,
it sounds right, but
it was a lot of discussion at that time about sequencing, where you put certain songs, and I've never, I guess I've done records with Darren and like the other records that I've recorded on in the digital age, with Ryan from Photocrime and stuff like that. Like I was
Patterson, former guest of the show.
Yeah, and I was psyched to play with that guy also, and like I toured Europe twice with Photocrime and played on those tours.
I
think Darren played on some Photocrime songs too.
Talk about a lived-in world, man.
Yeah,
that guy's awesome.
Yeah.
What were you gonna say, Darren? Go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say it's interesting and fun to come up with where a song goes, especially for vinyl. Because like you're right, there's a sound thing to have a kind of equal minutes on one side and a side too, but it's also there's songs that work well as the last song on the first side and the first song on the second side, and it's interesting to get that right. You know, it's not necessarily just the amount of time you're working with, but there's some songs that's not going to work as a second or third song. It's going to work better as like the second to last and the second side. You know, so but
you're right.
I love
because
doing that.
Because you're also like, sometimes you want to give people time to contemplate and be like, oh yeah, because they have to flip it over or something, so they have to like think about, wow, it's crazy. They're like, oh, okay, that happened there and that was cool, and then then you're off to the races for like ultimately, you know, side two, and that can look at my war.
Well, yeah,
you know, like it can be a totally different experience.
but
all
but
roads
also,
go back to Black Flag, apparently. Sorry, but anyway.
But I just want to mention one other thing about vinyl. I personally think that is the perfect amount of time for somebody to watch. I mean, someone to listen to a record and enjoy it from start to finish. I feel like when we got into more of the CD age, the record labels wanted bands to suck up all the time, and then you have some records that are 50, 60 minutes long. And who has the attention span for that? You know, whereas
oh my God,
when you listen to a record, you're like, this is awesome. It's the same thing seeing a band play live. You never want to play too long and ruin your welcome. You'd rather play a shorter set.
Leave them wanting more.
Somebody will want to come see you, to come and see you again, right?
You're goddamn right. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Perfect example.
Guided by Voices?
Exactly. Guided by Voices. A clear example of that, right? Yeah. You know, I was talking about the same principle on the tour, and the example I use, and I do really like him, and especially this record, was a Super Unknown by Soundgarden, which is 70 minutes long, and that's a lot. That's too long. That's like 2 records. That's like it's enough, really, But it's not that it's a bad record. No, it's a good record. It's just it's so much music, and it's so much from that era of just like, oh, well, we can fit all this, we can fit all of this music in this format called the compact disc. Let's put as much of it as we possibly can, and that was just a thing for a while, and that's absolutely insane. That was just Edsel. They did that. I'm gonna light up So Rob. Oh yeah, that one record. God, it's wild long.
It's crazy. I think that I have like the first Edsel 7 inches, and then like a couple of the records after that.
Yeah.
I don't know. God, I don't remember if I heard the later stuff.
Oh,
but I should check it out.
No, it's good. I mean, they're all good, but like, and again, I can't believe I'm lighting the man up. He hasn't been on the show in years, but
yeah,
but like, I'm still. But I even thought, I was like, man, that record's long. It's like, oh, we know, yeah. It was just such was the style of its time.
Yeah.
All right, Worthington. I think Darren, this one's neither your back. This one's you. Let's do this.
Why don't you go, Eric, so I can remember what the song goes and
right.
how it goes.
Eric, you go first.
Okay.
You start this song.
I remember this is a song where we had, I think we wrote like 3 or 4 different beginnings to this. This is the one that like Jay did the weird lo-fi thing at the beginning, like you kind of do that like da 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 da.
That's right. I do remember this one. Yep. Uh-huh.
And then we started it differently a bunch of times. I remember we demoed this with Jay, and like Darren did this thing at the end. Like when we demoed it with Jay, it was like really not put together song at all. And we were just kind of fucking around at the end and like, you know, hitting distortion pedals, and Darren was like screwed around with drums. And I remember this was the first time I remember recording with Jay, and Darren did this like crazy fill in like the demo version. And I remember sitting there with Jay listening back, and Jay was just like, what the fuck, man? That dude is incredible. And I feel like it was like that moment that Jay was like, I'm going to be in a band with this guy someday.
Yeah, there you go.
But
called the shot.
Yeah.
That's right.
But I do remember like thinking that this was a cool studio effect that I was like okay with. It was
Right,
also
yeah,
fun.
yeah.
We played live, but not for that long. We played it for a while. We didn't play it to the end though, I don't think. Did we?
I think we did. I think it wasn't on every set that we played, but it was one that it stayed in the set, you know. But I think the reason why I like the effect at the way it starts is not necessarily any effects. It was just room mics. That's what it was.
Yeah,
It was
because
just
You're right.
well,
it was
because
just
it
like,
gets that kind of
you know,
like difference in fidelity, right? Like where it's like here's the sound of the room, here's the sound of the band.
Yeah, you're not
there's
using any delay or reverb. You're just using the mics and, you know, adding and subtracting, you know, in a more natural way to get the effect. So.
I think the song I can think of that does it the best is that Bark Market song, "Visible Cow," where he does like it's like literally just the such a fucking engineer thing to do, but like where it's just like it's limited to, you know, like almost like what the folkways recording of like you know, like a blues artist would be, and then like opens up a little bit here for the intro, and then it's like full field after that. And,
Yeah. Because everyone was like into the PZMs at the time too, weren't they?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes,
So everyone was like
absolutely.
sticking them on the walls.
Yep. Well, and that's the kind of thing because you can get a sort of a different kind of bigness that way, and also like it's just kind of cool too.
Yeah,
like,
totally.
I mean, if you got a good sounding room, you know, fuck it.
Well, you know, that's funny. You're talking about the '90s. That is such a '90s thing.
It's
the
such
PZM
a
mic.
90s thing.
Holy
Oh my
shit.
god,
You
yeah.
know? I mean,
Yes.
that's 80s to the nth degree right there.
I mean, isn't that how you recorded "Spookin' the Birds" also?
Yeah, definitely. I think I had one like underneath the floor tom. Yeah.
All right, so this isn't tape op, but we're talking about what's known as pressure zone microphones, which are like omnidirectional cardioid mics, and actually, we're pressure zone microphones. Is what they're called. You know, okay, cool.
Yeah.
I don't think
that's
knew what this stood for.
Yeah, no, like that's what I because I was like, what's a PZM? What is pressure zone microphone? Oh, so the idea is that you get especially things are more progressive, like transients and stuff along those lines. It'll hit. I think they use them for like in hockey when dudes hit the wall.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, I think that's where they came from, if I remember correctly. Like it's like, and so like they wanted like, well, we really want to hear the bones crack when they hit the wall, and
Nice.
it's like, so they made it. But it turns out that
I mean,
in recording, you know, it sounds kind of neat. It's like, oh, that's kind of cool. Like that's
Well, and
you get
also too, I feel like they made the drums sound like a kit instead of just like very directional mics.
right.
You know, it gave it this like it sounded like a kit. You know, but you had to be
It sounds
careful
like if
with
you're in a room, if you're in like a punk rock show and you're in a room
Exactly.
with a drum set playing, and then you get like that full field of like, oh no, here's like the sound of each drum that's going along with everything, and it's just a different way to present the music, but it was very much an 80s thing. For sure. Like,
I mean, but as dated as it may be, like there was.
It sounded rad.
Yeah, it sounded good. It wasn't like the, you know, there was like also like the, you know, putting distortion on the vocals, like
Right.
that was like a thing for a while there too. Like,
Yes.
did that age as well? I'm not so sure, but
No.
and
I'm gonna go and tell you, no, it didn't.
yeah,
There's a few rare exceptions that prove the rule, but otherwise, like, oh, okay.
speaking of guided by voices, yeah.
Right, exactly. Which is just like, and the only distortion there is like literally the natural distortion of like recording into a 4-track in ways that 4-tracks are not meant to be used. You know,
Right.
Great and brilliant for them for doing it, but you know, it's like anything; it can become trendy.
Sure.
Anyway,
Not mad at a PZM.
no, they're great. And like I'm pretty sure, and I don't have anybody fact check me on that, but I'm pretty sure it was like just like literally dudes hitting like they're like, well, we really need to hear the impact for our viewers. Let's go.
I mean, cool story.
Yeah, I mean,
it's not true,
even if it's not true, who knows?
it's a rumor.
Yeah, exactly. Print the legend, please. Anyway, Worthington, is that where we're on? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So anything else? Anything else there for that tune?
I think we covered it. Or
Yeah, I think we
Darren.
got it.
Yeah, pressure zone microphones. That's what they stand for. That I know. I only know that because Max Bandmate was an engineer. So there you go.
I'm happy to learn something.
Didn't expect to learn something today, did you? And here we are. Some Walk. Tell me about this one. Darren, you want to start it off or no?
I do remember this one, and Erik, we did do this on a 7-inch, right? Wasn't that a split with somebody?
With Angel Hair.
Angel Hair, okay. But was it a different version though?
It was a different version, and we recorded it.
Yeah,
because
I think the version we did on the split was one of the demos we did at Jay's house.
Nuh-uh. Nice. This was with Juan. We did demo it at Jay's.
Oh.
But we recorded this with Juan in our basement, and then I went and did the vocals at the Pirate House, which was a group house in DC. And we used Guy's reel to reel to record the vocals over top of that.
Nice.
Lost Darren again. And then it was weird too because Angel Hair just split up, and VSS really came on right after.
Almost immediately afterwards. Yeah.
And so it ended up being an Angel Hair song that they had recorded and just didn't have anywhere to put it, I think. And then we connected through this dude, Jeff, who was doing Strict. He was an Arizona dude who was in Last Option and which is kind of like an Arizona hardcore 80s band. That the Walls knew, and I knew, and we all knew this dude, but he was the one who put that record out as a split with Angel Hair, which was weird because we were selling it then in the spring while touring with VSS.
Right, which is hilarious. Yeah, I always liked Paul's drums in that band.
Yeah.
He actually played in a band called Generalissimo with my ex-bandmate.
Cool.
Very much like Devo plus Fear plus Chinese Olympic events, like crazy band. But I always thought he had a cool style.
Yeah.
And interesting, different from you guys, but not far afield necessarily. So that's interesting.
Yeah, I was it's funny because leading up to this record, I was texting back and forth with Sonny to try to remember. I thought we had played with Angel Hair, and it's in prepping for all this, I tried to write down a list of all the bands we played with, not just for this interview, but I mean,
just in general,
in general to try to remember this time period, especially when doing the write-ups for the re-releases and all that sort of stuff. And I put Angel Hair on the list of bands, and then I was like, shit, I don't remember if we did or not. It's weird that we would have done a split 7-inch with a band we never played with, but it may have actually been the case.
Yeah.
Sonny and I both couldn't really actually remember, but it would have been potentially before Darren with Bobby anyway, I think, coming through Colorado in the early days. So,
I mean, look, I'm not trying to make this about me, but in Replicator, I once asked J Church to play a show with us, if you know that band.
Played with them.
And love them. And they were like, oh yeah, we can't play. And then, but he was like, you want to do a split 7-inch instead?
What? That's crazy.
Which is quintessentially, and people think I'm guarantee you I'm not making this story up. This is literally just Lance Hahn. That's just Lance.
Yeah.
That's just who he was. They did 1 million split 7, and it was that was from that culture. And I was like, we don't have anything to record right now, but and we didn't do it. And we should have done it. But even though it would have been the weirdest split 7-inch ever. But anyway.
But as you bring up J Church, it's funny because when I was making the list of all the bands we had played with, you realize how small of a scene that was in the 90s.
Right.
It really is a list of 90s bands, the 90s bands from that scene. The scene was not big. We all kind of played with each other or knew each other or slept on each other's floors and all that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And it's a solid list of bands to have played with. It's it's fun people, good bands. So bands that I liked, some bands that I was but
Yeah, but it's a murderer's row of interesting bands, and for the most part, right? Or at least interesting people in interesting bands. Maybe that isn't the one, and they did something cooler later on or something, but still, it's part of the tapestry.
But if anything was like true of like a pre-digital age, it's just that it wasn't super saturated.
Right.
Yet.
Yeah. Well, that's what we're dealing with now, and different set of problems. Anyway, anything else for Some Walk?
I just remember it being one continuous drum fill in that whole song.
Yeah. Well, yes.
Yeah, but it written that way.
Right.
But,
Right. Yeah.
But yeah, that was another one I feel like we played all the time. Yeah, I like that song. That was good.
It's a good tune.
It's also the first song written for this record.
Yeah. Oh, was it really? Oh.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, first song written after Situation.
Nice. So that brings us to Continued, aka Epic Closer. Eric, you want to lead us off on this last one?
Yeah, this was a song that I'm not mad about this being like a late in the writing process, because we kind of put this together right at the last minute, and the lyrics were done in studio. And unlike some other songs that were kind of done that way, like this one was a happy accident, I would say. I remember like figuring out the guitar pick thing where you're kind of doing this pick harmonic that kind of goes down as I kind of like pick down the string, and wanting to put that into a song somehow.
Sure.
And this was kind of what came of that. And then we did have the song. We didn't even demo this song. We had the song structure figured out, went into the studio and kind of like whipped it out, and then did the vocals. I mean, if anything can be said about like recording with Jay, like I loved working with him on singing and vocal stuff, because he was much more trained. He would like bring me tea like while recording, tell me when to like take breaks,
right?
Tell me, try things out. When should we double this? Like, and like, honestly, like the harmonies, like any of the harmonies that are done are not my idea. Those are like Jay's idea, and he's like a fucking wizard of harmonies.
Well, absolutely, and I think that really led to kind of an iconic thing with the band that. Like when you think about like, what Ian and Guy were doing in Fugazi, right? Like it was sort of like, this is like a different kind of take on that style of having the two things going and having them like do something kind of cool that maybe you haven't heard that in punk rock at the time,
Yeah.
And that's there's something to be said for that.
But I really liked how this song was like a little bit of a window to the future, and, the possibilities that we had for toning things down a little bit, this whole song was also just a nice breather in the set. That's after I did like
sure, yeah,
and all this stuff,
yeah,
doing whatever other '90s stuff was going on.
Right.
But it was a nice break. And I think and if we didn't end with Don Juan, I feel like we ended with this playing live sometimes.
Yeah, we played this one a lot. But yeah, the brush on like the vocal thing, I feel like. Well, like with any band, when you play with 2 or 3 other people, that's how you get better as a musician, is when you push one another.
Yes.
And that's the thing I can say at every band I've ever been in is, somebody might bring an idea and it's different, but that's how you grow. And I feel like
absolutely
Erik working with Jay in the studio, I think Erik's vocals just got stronger, like just the phrasing and everything. And that was the one thing that I took from like working with Jay, was the band just got stronger as far as the writing and the vocals, because of Jay was such a big influence, I believe. And this was definitely one of those songs that benefited from that.
Like he's not going to be a dick about it, but he's not going to let you get away with weak stuff either.
No,
he's going to make you, but it's going to be like in a way that's very positive. But he's going to make you bring your best face forward.
Well,
right.
Jay would always say, "You know what? I think you have a better one in you. Let's do one more." And it was in a good way, because at the end of the day, we give a shit about it, and we want to make sure we're doing the right take. So
yeah. No, it's there's a lot
and
part of being an
the
engineer is being a psychologist. I feel like to a certain degree too.
And and here's another one I want to add too.
Sure.
I am very glad we got a chance to record the reel to reel, because that's why we were practicing all the time, because nobody had enough money to have 5 to 10 different reels to reels and have multiple takes.
God,
you had one shot, and you got to get it right. And,
if you could afford a clean reel of 2-inch tape, you'd be lucky.
And especially this song, there's a mistake that I make in there, and every time I listen to it, I'm like, God damn it!
Right.
But here's the thing though, it's a human being playing.
Right.
And
yeah, man.
You know what? You listen to any records from the 70s. There's screw ups all over the place. But that's the difference. They're human beings playing. We all screw up. Sometimes we're locked in. Sometimes we screw up. Whatever. You take it for what it is.
What's the saying? Do it twice, and it's just a part. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's the other thing that you risk is when you do songs too many times, you lose that.
Yeah, man.
That special thing. So. But
yeah, because I was just talking with Darren about this yesterday. Was the fact that I know that later, well, we talked about this, like at this time period, we weren't recording with click tracks at all because there was no need,
right.
It's not like we were doing stuff in Pro Tools and you could cut a section and move it to another section or it wouldn't line up.
Put it on the grid. Yeah.
But Darren said there was something that we recorded. What was it? What would you say we were done with a click track? I can't remember.
Yeah, the only song that I remember was a song off a Situation Hand called Dirt.
Oh yeah,
and that was one of the very few songs that Jim sang on that record. But I remember that was the first time I ever played to a click, and man, that was tough.
Yeah, when you're not used to it, boy.
But
but
what's funny is that now I love playing to a click. It's just different.
Playing to a click track to me is like the same thing as a compressor pedals. We're like, no, when I was younger, and I'm like, okay, actually, it's pretty, whatever. There's a time and a place. But it's the reflexive no of the young player, right? Like, no, absolutely not. How would I? No. Like,
that was also the weird thing of touring with Photocrime. There's no drummer. And it's
right.
And the song's going to keep going.
Yeah.
If I screw up, the song is just going and there is no turning back.
If you space out and just kind of go off of it's like, oh no, everything is still doing the exact thing it does every night.
Yeah.
And you have to come back to it somehow and be ready for it. No, that's
But it was weird because I remember talking to Ryan and I heard some of his interview with you of him talking about how wanting to be more of a band element.
Right.
Because when I played with him during that time period, it was really I knew my part. I could play it without looking at anybody. I didn't have to look at anybody. And coming out of Kerosene, which was, well, it was supposed to be a lot of looking at each other. I remember time periods of, Darren be trying to get someone's attention with a stick to dude,
over here. Hey, I'm trying to.
The change is coming, dude. Get it together. But Photocrime, it's everyone was kind of individually playing. And Kerosene was very much a band.
Well, and it's going to ebb and flow a little bit, right? And
Sure.
that's kind of what makes it interesting. It's what makes it cool. And they're different, different courses, different.
Sure.
Meal.
And obviously no shade on Photocrime. I love doing that.
No, but it's a different challenge. If you're not used to playing that way, it'll, I know people have been railroaded by that and like, wow, I'm not cut for this. And then some people are like, oh no, it's fine. I just really need to think about this differently.
Yeah. But I do remember that we were still of the idea, you don't stop the song. When we're playing live,
Nope.
We're going to keep going.
Keep going.
Your way through it.
Yeah. Don't stop.
I think it's pretty rare that we ever kind of we're let's start this one over again.
It has, it's you have to really train wreck it. All right, there's no coming back from this one. This is where we're at. All right, so there you go. That's Come By to Kill Me. That's great. Solid Brass Records reissue. Formative Kerosene 454 record. Lovingly put together.
Thanks to all the solid brass guys.
Yeah, they're doing a lot of great work, man. Like they're doing that archival work of just bringing stuff in that, you know, maybe you remember it, maybe you don't, but either way, here it is, and this is it's nice. It's very nice. It's great talking to you guys about it too, man. Like it's.
Thanks,
I hope some of the younger listeners check it out if they don't know it, and I hope some of the old heads do as well, and maybe pick up a copy or 3. Makes a great gift.
If they didn't make it to this part, they won't hear that.
Right? Exactly. Well, okay, fine, but all right, fellas, it's been great having you. Really appreciate having both of you on, talking so much about the music and everything. Last thing, this is the only canned question I ever ask, so you can choose to interpret it however you like. Both of you have to answer. And Darren, we'll start with you.
Mm-hmm.
Why do you do what you do?
Music-wise or life?
You can choose to interpret however you like. That's the key question.
Why do I do what I do? I don't know, because music has been a part of my life ever since I was probably 5 years old. And I just love creating. Just want to continue making records. It's probably the best, most fun thing that I can do in life. I don't know what else to say about it. It's and I cannot stand when somebody says it's a hobby. It's not a hobby. It's just a part of, you know, my life. You know, got to continue doing it. And hopefully I'll do a new project with Erik sometime soon.
There you go.
It's been a minute.
It's been a bit.
I know Jay has also said, hey, man, when you got some stuff written, let me know.
That's right.
I'm ready to play bass.
It's a good man to have in your corner.
So
Darren's a great dude to have in your corner as well.
Absolutely. Erik, why did you do what you do?
I think like the Kerosene or any sort of these creative endeavors where like, man, it's the thing you got to do to stay sane and find peace in the craziness of all the rest of the shit in life. And, you know, if you happen upon music and you feel it within you, then like there's nothing like writing, there's nothing like collaborating, there's nothing like performing. Kerosene was definitely a live band. And even as much as like I love writing at home, I miss the performing aspect. And that was certainly part of the why.
Yeah. So this is normally where I just nod and just say goodbye, right? But you know, if you miss playing live, how about playing live?
Well, that's why I went and do the Photocrime stuff. You know, it was like an opportunity to do that.
All right. Yeah,
Sure,
I love Photocrime. Sure. Photocrime's great. Yeah,
but that was also years ago at this point.
Yeah, well,
seems like it just happened, but it was a while back.
Yeah, it was a while back. Just saying. Yeah. Songs are good, man. Think about it. Anyway, Erik, Darren, thank you guys so much for being on. It's an absolute pleasure. The album's great. Hope everyone picks up a copy. And thank you so much for being on the show. And see you down the line.
Thank you, sir.
Take care.
Appreciate it. See ya.
There they go. Erik and Darren, Kerosene 454. Let's listen to one of the tunes from this very excellent record. And actually, see if we go long. Should we go long, go short? Let's go. You know what? Let's do short. Let's do Tracer.
Either I'm seeing things or it's a shortfall.
There you go. Whoa, Kerosene 454 there. Come to Kill Me, the new reissue. It's Tracer. It's a bombastic intro. There you go. That was Erik and Darren, Kerosene 454. Hope you enjoyed that. That was a long time coming. Glad to be a part of that. They're doing a what is it, like you go on Bandcamp and it's like a listening party or something. January 23rd, 2025. So depending on when you're listening to this, it's in the future or it's in the past. I don't know. But I'll probably be there. So there you go. Get that record. Name of the show is Conan, Neutron's Protonic Reversal. Thank you so very much for listening to it. The show airs Thursdays, 8 Eastern, 7 Central, 6 Mountain, 5 Pacific. Streaming live on YouTube. Podcast later everywhere. And if you like the show and want to get episodes sooner, you can do that by going to patreon.com/Protonic Reversal. $1 a month. Gladly achieves that goal. Helps keep the lights on. Helps keep the heat on, frankly, to be blunt right now. And it's deeply appreciated. Thanks, everybody, for liking, subscribing on your platform of choice. Leaving a review. All that helps people discover the show. It's a really darn nice thing to do.
I've got 50,000 watts of power.
Technically not the last show of the year. There's my favorite records of the year episode, best of the year, coming up. But I'll see you in 2025. There's a bunch of cool stuff coming. Don't worry about it. Stay tuned. Have a great holiday for people that celebrate. Anything else?
Turn sound into electricity.
I don't think so. Just stay safe out there, all right?
Can you hear me now?
Check you later.
Out on Route 128, dark and lonely. I got my radio on. Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now? Welcome to my top 10. I'd like to thank our sponsor. But we haven't got a sponsor. Not if you were the last man on Earth. She was prepared to prove it. This one goes out to a special girl. But there is no special girl. It's the end of radio. The last announcer plays the last record. The last what? Leaves the transmitter. Circles the globe in search of a listener. Can you you hear me now? Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now? Is it really broadcasting if there's no one there to receive? It's the end of radio. As we come to the close of our broadcast day,